All right, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Facebook and YouTube Live. My name is Brandon Oliver, and I am the Director of Marketing and Communications for East Central ISD. And we have another great episode for you this week, geared towards special education parents. And we can't do special education without our guru, so I'm going to bring on first Alethea Mash. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. And this is like becoming old hat, you
It
know,
is.
a, a
It,
common occurrence. I'm enjoying it. So,
it's like Johnny Carson and Ed McMahon in here, you know.
yeah,
So
okay. I'll take it. Most of our audience may not know who that is.
true. All right, so Alethea, tell us what's going on today and what are we doing?
Okay, well, April is Autism Awareness Month, and we have Miss Anissa Moore with us again, who is the guru, right? I get to introduce her again, but the presentation is full of great information that parents can use. And whether it's just information gathering or ideas to use at home, maybe it spurs questions that they'd like to ask, maybe, get more information about things. So that's why we're here. And I just love that we're doing this and that it's posted and people are welcome to go back and review or look for the first time. And so I will announce or introduce her now. So Anissa Moore is an independent educational consultant and licensed board certified behavior analyst, BCBA, LBA, specializing in the field of ADHD, autism spectrum disorders, emotional disturbance, and oppositional defiance disorder. A certified teacher and administrator with over 27 years experience. Her previous roles have included special education early childhood teacher, that's my spot, autism specialist, school district coordinator, and assistant director of special education. Additionally, Anissa taught as an adjunct professor at Sam Houston State University and continues to provide guest lectures at university classes throughout the San Antonio area. She currently consults as a public speaker. She's here with us tonight. Program consultant, motivational coach, and BCBA for school districts, agencies, and legal firms across the nation. What I love most is her ability to balance research-based principles with humor and personal experience in all her public speaking topics, encouraging participants to celebrate the gifts of special needs. That's why we're all here, right? While addressing and supporting student challenges. Anissa lives in the San Antonio, Texas area with her husband and her teenage daughter. That's getting a little easier for me, Anissa.
Why, thank you, Alethea. Well, every time I hear it, it's getting easier for you and it's getting more humbling for me because every time I hear it, I think, oh my gosh. So yes, it's always so wonderful and dear to be able to speak here in my hometown of San Antonio and to once again be with East Central ISD families and educators. And I know I've been here a couple of times now, and I'm always very honored to be here and just to reach out, especially this month. I'm so excited. This is my favorite month, I think, ever besides Christmas because April is very special to me for several reasons. But April is actually the month that my daughter was born. She's got a birthday coming up this weekend. But April is also Autism Awareness Month. Now, we recognize Autism Awareness Day is typically April the 2nd. And I don't know if y'all noticed, but Alethea was wearing blue. And Brandon, when he introduced Alethea, was wearing blue. And I am wearing blue. Now, we actually did not plan that. Well, we kind of did. I should just tell you we planned it. But the color for Autism Awareness Month is blue. And the reason for that, a lot of people know that it's blue, but they don't know why it's blue. So I'm going to tell you. Blue was actually the chosen color because it creates a sense of calm and peace and tranquility. And for so many of our students and adults with autism, they're constantly looking for that calm and peace in a sometimes kind of chaotic and very unpredictable world. So we were wearing blue, and I hope that if you knew that April 2nd was Autism Awareness Recognition Day, that you lit it up blue. So I'm excited to talk about autism, to celebrate the gifts of autism, to answer some of your questions. I'm going to give you some statistics tonight. And of course, as always, I'm going to jump into some strategies. So again, whether you're a parent, whether you're a caregiver, whether you're just a loved one that loves a kiddo with autism, whether you are maybe on the spectrum yourself and you're watching this, or you're helping support these wonderful, special kiddos and adults, hopefully there'll be a little bit of something for everyone tonight. So I'm going to jump in and share my screen, and we're going to get into the presentation. Give me just a minute while technology catches up to my enthusiasm. And here we go. All right. So we're going to talk tonight about a spectrum of success, appreciating and supporting autism spectrum disorders. A few objectives tonight in the short amount of time that we have together. We're going to talk about some characteristics and statistics related to the diagnosis of autism. Now, again, I know probably a lot of y'all on tonight and maybe streaming this later as you watch it might know a lot about autism already. But hopefully this might be a refresher for you, but this might also serve as a good catalyst to share with others that are maybe working with your child or working with a loved one with autism. We're also going to talk about strategies, not just strategies that you have in place, but to really enhance them. And what are some of those critical components that our kids with autism need on a day-to-day basis to really be successful? And then finally, we're going to kind of wrap up and talk about how autism as a culture. So we get this a lot of times, especially from those that maybe aren't immersed in the field. Now, I have been in the field of public education for almost 30 years. And I make this joke all the time. I was like 10 when I started teaching. Not really. But I have been in this field a long, long time. And my very first year that I was in the field of special education, I had students with autism. And way back then, our prevalence was not that high as it is now. And we just didn't know a whole lot about autism. And we were still trying to get information about not just what it was neurologically, but how do we work effectively with these kids? Because y'all have probably heard the saying, if you've met one kid with autism, you've met one kid with autism, because the spectrum is so broad. There's such a big range, and it is not a one-size-fits-all approach to supporting these kids, even though there are some good tried and true research-based principles that work with all kids. So what is autism? It truly is a spectrum disorder, and it's a broad range of conditions that are typically referred to challenges as far as social skills and repetitive behaviors and speech and communication. Even if you're working with a kiddo or you have a kiddo that has some good speech, maybe they're hyper vocal, but they might have trouble with pragmatic or social speech or some of those nonverbal cues. You know, speech is not just about talking. When we talk about speech, we're also talking about language. And language is not just about the words that we say, but it's also about the things that we hear. It's about gestures. It's about facial expressions. It's about reading the room. It's all those things put together. And those can be real struggles for kiddos and adults with autism. So it's a spectrum of abilities and needs, and it ranges anywhere from very significantly impaired students that have a multitude of needs and supports and therapies that need to be in place for them, to all the way to the very unique, highly gifted, solving all the world's problems, unbelievably beautiful, intelligent IQ type of kiddos. the autism brain itself is just beautiful. No matter where the student may fall on the spectrum, the autism brain is very unique, but it's very beautiful in the fact that there's always hidden gifts. There's hidden gifts. There's such a uniqueness to it. And once we continue to dive into how their brain works, then we can better reach and appreciate them. They tell us what we need to learn. They tell us what we need to fix, what we need to learn, what we need to continue to work on to better support them. So the research, because again, I get this question all the time too, being in this field for as long as I've been in, what causes autism? What is the cause for autism? Well, at this point, there's a lot of research that supports that the childhood vaccinations that were once thought to cause autism, a lot of research supports that those do not cause autism. However, there's still a lot of research that keeps happening in that area, in that field. Because of that onset of time where a student might be diagnosed with autism, which is typically around the age 2, 3, 4 years of age, which is when we see a lot of our kiddos getting those immunizations. But at this time, the research doesn't support that the vaccines truly cause the autism. The research right now suggests more that autism develops from a combination of both genetic and non-genetic influences. So genetic, lots of research in this field, but also some of those non-genetic influences such as, environment and things like that. So there is some information. There's a lot of great resources on autismspeaks.org for those that want to read a little bit more about it. So here's some quick spectrum statistics. So to kind of put this in a frame of reference, back when I started this, again, almost 28 years ago, I guess, almost 30 years ago, when I started working in this field, we were like, kiddos with autism were like 1 in 1,500, 1,600. It was right around then. And now in 2020, this last year that we got information for the Center for Disease Control, the CDC was reporting that approximately 1 in 54 kiddos in the United States is diagnosed with autism. Those are sobering statistics. That is just staggering, staggering. It has gone up every single year consistently. What has been consistent, though, as far as over the years, is that boys are still more likely to be diagnosed with autism than girls. That has been consistent, whether it has been in the 70s, 80s, 90s, up into today. A lot of our kiddos are typically diagnosed with autism by about age 4. They might start off with an earlier diagnosis of, say, a speech impairment or a speech and language processing disorder. Sensory processing disorder might be coming up with their physician before they get that actual full label of an autism spectrum disorder. However, some kiddos are diagnosed with that full spectrum as early as age 2, depending on the significance of their autism. Here's just some information, though, about that spectrum, how big that spectrum is. And then an estimated 40% of people with autism are nonverbal. Now, that does not mean they don't have a lot to say, and there's ways that they can express themselves. So I'm going to talk in a little bit about the importance of a communication system. This is a non-negotiable. Having a good, strong communication system for any student that struggles with both speech and language is critical. The thing about autism, too, is it does not show bias. It affects every ethnic and socioeconomic group there is. It affects every country that there is. There has not been a pattern, again, except for that higher prevalence in boys. And one of the toughest things as an educator that we see, and also I'm sure if you've seen this as a parent or as a caregiver, nearly 2/3 of our kiddos with autism between the ages of 6 and 15, so that's that school age between about kindergarten till middle of high school, have had or experienced bullying before. At this point, there is no cure for autism. I would love that. We hope for that. We continue to research critically in so many different areas. But at this point, there is no cure. And actually, right now, so many of our higher functioning students and our adults that are on the spectrum that are out there advocating for autism awareness, for accommodations, and for autism acceptance are encouraging us to look at autism as a culture, not as a puzzle to fix or a problem to solve, but as a culture to accept and to work with and to support and love. So breaking it down, and if you have questions as we're going through this, I really want to hear from you. I want to hear from you toward the end. You can also pop those up in the chat if you have access to that, because I really want to hear your questions tonight and be a resource for you. We are all in this together. But breaking it down, things that I want you to really know about in working with a child or an adult that's on the spectrum. They have impaired social skills, social communication, okay? And knowing that, especially those super high functioning kiddos that might be sitting in your classroom, educators, listen to this. If they are sitting in your classroom and, you know, they are acing every test and they are going through and just getting the most amazing grades, you can't forget that education doesn't just stop with the academic component. We have to look at those social needs and how are we supporting that social emotional learning that we look at really for all of our kids, whether they have autism or not. You know, we look at social emotional learning. It's such a big thing right now, especially with COVID and everything that we've been through, that we've all been through this year. We can't ignore the social communication needs and challenges that a student might have. Also looking at relationship issues and what we call theory of mind. Theory of mind is trying to look at somebody else's perspective, putting themselves in another person's shoes. That might be very challenging for a student on the spectrum. So in turn, looking at things like empathy, looking at things like what was that character feeling in that story that we read, those might be a little bit more challenging. One of the gifts of autism, though, is once something has gone from short-term memory into long-term memory, that long-term memory, it's there, it sticks. And that is, again, one of those gifts of autism that is really amazing and unique. So again, once we're using teaching tools and supports and modeling, and we go through that for that short-term memory acquisition, once it gets into long-term, it's there and they can refer back to that. Difficulty with abstract thinking. Years ago, when I was an autism unit teacher, before I became a consultant, I made a visit to one of my students. He was 5 years old, sharp as a tack, bright little guy, lots of challenging behaviors though. And I had done a home visit and I was working with the family in the home on some pretty significant behaviors. And the parents had just an amazing sense of humor. Dad was in the military, so he was back and forth, TDY, you know, sometimes he was there, sometimes he had to go overseas and work and come back. He had a great sense of humor. He was a big jokester. It was a great family to work with. And they definitely had the sense of humor to work with my little dude because he needed a sense of humor sometimes just to get through the rough times. So when talking about abstract thinking, I was in the living room and I was talking with his parents. And of course, Dad was joking and he was rubbing his head and he was talking about how his son was making him go bald. And he was like, yep, I'm going bald. I'm going bald. Just look at me. And of course, he wasn't going bald. He was completely bald at that point. Well, my little guy, their son, started to panic. He started to cry and he raced upstairs and you heard this boom, 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 thud just running upstairs. And then you heard all these doors slamming and just everything happening. And we were going, what's going on? What happened here? And he was starting to have a meltdown. And then we heard this boom, 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 boom coming down the stairs. And there's our kid. And he's got a bag and he's got his shoes on and he is crying and he's saying, Dad, wait, I want to go. I want to go. And his dad was like, dude, what's going on? Well, where do you want to go? We're not going anywhere. Where do you want to go? And he said, Dad, I want to go bald. I want to go bald. Wait for me. I want to go bald. So he thought going bald was a place because dad was in the military, and he thought that was another place dad was going. So again, difficulty with abstract thinking. That was really hard for him. Understanding things like similes and metaphors and all those things can play a part in working with a child with autism. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. On a lighter note, we quickly assured our little guy that going bald was not a place he wanted to visit. So we don't want to visit. We don't want to go. Let's just stay out of that place for a while. Looking, of course, at behavior responses and some of those challenges that go with that. But when you think about it, when you've got social and communication challenges, of course, you might have behavior challenges because you're frustrated. You can't communicate your basic needs, or you can't maybe understand what's happening when there's a change that occurs and you weren't prepped for it. So no, there's always a reason for the behavior. And of course, we look at things like sensory issues and deficits in executive functioning, which is basically how the mind sorts information, takes in information, self-regulates, all those things. So students on the spectrum really need that multitude of home and school supports to be successful. So in these next several slides, I'm going to go through these pretty quickly because I really want to kind of focus more on just the supports that we can do. But these are things, if you're using them already, good for you, keep using them. If you've been a little skeptical about, yeah, I hear about visuals or I hear about sensory things and I don't know where to start, hopefully this will give you just a little bit of information that you can take and do your own research on the student or kiddo, special kiddo that you have, and to put things into place unique for them. So visuals, the power of the picture. Picture's worth 1,000 words? Yes, it is, because a picture can really make things concrete. It makes our language more permanent for students, even if they are readers and they are vocal speech communicators. Visuals solidify things. They make language permanent. It helps with changes. It helps with multi-step directions. It can clarify expectations for a student. It can help with predictability. And also, when you're reinforcing a kiddo, this is what I call neutral territory. Okay, if you've ever been in a power struggle with a student, and I bet everybody on the other side of that screen can raise their hand, and I'm raising my hand too as a parent. If you've ever been in a power struggle with any kiddo, nobody tends to win. You go back and forth and back and forth. But if you have a visual support that shows what the expectation is, what needs to be done, that can kind of serve as neutral territory. It's a little bit harder to argue with a visual than it is to a person. This can also reinforce positive behaviors because, again, it's providing and solidifying reinforcement for a kiddo. This is just a fun little visual that you can actually go to the internet and try to pull this up on Google Images. If you go to 9 reasons to use visuals on Google Images, you will probably get this. This is a great little thing that you can post up on your refrigerator at home. Teachers put this up. Use a little magnet and put it up on your filing cabinet so you can glance at it to remind you that visuals do not take the place of speech and communication. They simply enhance communication, both the input and the output. Visuals like schedules can be really helpful in helping a student prepare for things that are happening on a day-to-day basis. And this is not just for our students that might be younger, smaller, lower functioning, more impaired. Schedules work great for all students. What we really try to encourage, especially for our older students, is to understand that if they have things like a cell phone or an iPhone, that those can actually do more things than just look at YouTube. You can have your schedule on there. You can set reminders on there. Oh, I'm going to have a STAR test on Thursday. I need to study the night before. I need to go to bed earlier. So visuals like that can be really helpful. They can also help, again, when you are trying to prep a child for a change. So thinking in terms of pictures, there's a fantastic book by Dr. Temple Grandin, who is world-renowned absolutely amazing. I've had the honor and gift of actually being able to speak with her at a conference years ago. I was like, oh my God, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. She is unreal. She has tons of books out. But if you haven't read any of her books, I really suggest that you start with Thinking in Pictures. It's Dr. Temple Grandin, Thinking in Pictures, because it's such an aha moment when you're working or when you're loving and supporting a person on the spectrum. It just really solidifies what we do and how we can support kids. And Dr. Grandin has autism herself, so it's coming straight from her perspective, which was so valuable, so powerful. Again, when we know there's communication difficulties, we might see behavioral challenges. So again, there's always a reason for the behavior. Even if we can't stop it in the moment, what we try to do is see if we can catch it before it starts. But behaviors are indicative of things like oversensory stimulation, maybe understimulation. If there's a fear, if there's a change, if there's a lack of understanding, if there's some disorganization, all of those things can lead to anxiety, can lead to self-stimulatory behavior, which is a way to kind of self-regulate, and it can lead to behavioral challenges. So what we hope to do when we're looking at challenging behavior, and again, in the short amount of time we have tonight, I don't have time to go through a whole host of behavior strategies. I want to just give you a little taste though, and again, stress that behaviors happen for a reason. They typically function a certain way. And one of the best things we can do to support challenging behaviors is to determine not just stopping the behavior. We can't just tell a kid, don't do that, or calm down. Have you ever told a kiddo to calm down? Whether they have autism or not, have you ever told a spouse or significant other to calm down? How did that work for you? Probably not very good, right? Because we still have those emotions. We still have those feelings. We still have something that drove that behavior to occur. So one of the best things you can do in supporting these kiddos is to determine, why do I think the behavior occurred, and what can I teach the child to do instead? Because if you say stop, or if you say don't do that, those feelings are still there. The feeling behind the behavior is still there. That also doesn't teach a socially significant replacement behavior. So try to think, what is the most challenging behavior that I'm dealing with my child or with my student, with my loved one? Why do I think this child is doing this? What are they trying to communicate? How is it functioning? How's this behavior functioning? And what can I tell them to do instead? So for example, if a student is biting their hand because they're so angry and they're so frustrated when a change occurs, a replacement behavior might be, first of all, to get behind that behavior and prep for a change through visual supports. But then there might also be things like, in the moment, if the child starts to bite, to redirect them to a replacement, like a chew tube or something that's safe in the interim until you can get those behaviors decreased or hopefully just extinguished. So think again, how does it function? What is the child trying to communicate? Do they have a way to ask for help? Do they have a way to ask for a break because it is just too much? Okay. And when they do use that replacement behavior, when they do what they should be doing, such as asking for a break instead of biting their hand, and they go take that break, make sure to honor that. Make sure to reinforce the replacement behaviors. Because remember, once it goes from short-term memory to long-term memory, we got it in there. Okay. These things should be modeled, taught, and generalized. I want to give you a couple of tips and tricks because I know we have a lot of parents out there that are going to be watching and that are watching tonight. One of the questions I get quite a bit is, Anissa, we're having a hard time out in the community. We're having a hard time with outings because that is a typical, that's not a typical thing we do every single day. That is a change. It's not part of our typical routine. So I wanted to give y'all just a few strategies that you can use for things like outings and in the community. Especially, I've seen this come to fruition even more because so many of our students were kind of homebound and housebound all through the summer because of COVID. Even though, we were trying to get out and do walks and things like that, you might not have had your students going out into stores with you or limiting, things like, Chuck E. Cheese and all those wonderful overstimulating places that, that are out there for kids. So in going for outings and things like in the community, I want you to think of a few things that might be helpful. First of all, is there a schedule that indicates that there's a transition that's about to take place? Is there visuals that talk about where we're going to go and what we're going to do? I would steer clear of things like how long are we going to be there, because you never know about things like that. You might do something like a social story or simply a picture book by going to Google Images and typing in things like Red Robin restaurant, and you can actually show the student different pictures. Okay, we're going to go to Red Robin to eat, and these are some of the pictures. These are what we might see there. And it just explains the reason for the outing. We're going to eat, we're going to sit as a family, and when we're finished, we'll come back home or whatever. Having the communication system for the student. That is their voice. It should go with them everywhere, no matter where they go. That should be with them at all times. Just like we have our voice with us at all times, whatever their communication system is, even if they're verbal and they use visuals as just a backup because they can't get their words out and they have visuals to use when they're frustrated, make sure to bring those. And then I encourage what's called a travel bag. And if you go to, I have a separate YouTube page. It's called Anissa Moore Consulting. And I actually have a video on there. It's a few years old, but it's a video on there about how to create a travel bag. So if you go to that, you can look at that. It's a few minutes long, but if you're traveling on an airplane, if you're traveling in the car, for a few hours, and or if you just have a really hard time with a child that is in the car traveling for a certain period of time, you can put together a travel bag. These might be things like behavior picks as far as things that they need. This might be things like I need help, or you might even use things, again, replacement behaviors like hands down. If a student is doing something inappropriate in the car, make sure you have those visuals. Having things like sensory tools and fidgets. These are great, having things that they can do, maybe having headphones with music, calming toys, again, their communication system, and then an alternate item if needed, again, such as an iPad or a book or whatever, but have your bag ready to go, and that's designated as the travel bag for outings. That can be really effective when working with kiddos. I talked a little bit just now about things like sensory supports. Sensory supports can really be helpful with things like receptive language processing, with tolerating environments, and also just for self-regulation. So think about yourself when you get frustrated or stressed. Some of us pace, some of us walk around, some of us shake our leg under the table. Some of us fidget with a rubber band. I know a lot of times when I'm presenting, if I have a rubber band, if I'm in front of a big audience, I might be, fiddling with my necklace, or I might be doing something. And it's just kind of a movement that just calms us down. And everybody does it, but a student with autism might do it a little bit more outwardly and with a little bit more movement than we might see other students. So some sensory supports, first of all, these are an accommodation. This is not something that's earned. If a student is actually needing some sensory support, this is a need and not, do your work and then you can have your sensory, or do a really good job on your behavior, blah, 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 and then you can have your sensory. It might be that the sensory is helping them do their work, or it might be that the sensory strategy is helping them regulate their behavior. So this is not earned, it's an accommodation. It can help with focus. It can help with just, again, self-regulation. It might be that replacement behavior that goes from here, biting my hand, to fidgeting with something, and I keep my hands engaged so I can't bite my hand. So look at what your child might need, what they tend to respond to, and determine what are a few things that I can put together in a box, like a sensory box, and teach the child. You can go to this, you can pick something out when you're needing something. You can have something on the student's desk. You can have something in the student's bedroom or in the kitchen or in the living room, in that travel bag, all those things. So, but remember, if it's really distracting, if it goes flying and things like that, then it's probably not a sensory. So here's Anissa's rule. If they throw it and they continue to throw it, then it's not a fidget. It's not a sensory support. It's a toy. Most kids, if they like their sensory, if they feel like it's helping them, they will hold on to them for dear life. They're not going to be flying them around like this. They're going to be holding on to them, okay, because they want them, because they serve a self-soothing purpose. Okay, so those are just a few strategies. I know we just barely touched on things like communication and replacement behaviors and sensory, but those are kind of the biggest areas, in addition to making up some of the need for social supports and, again, self-regulation. Those are some of the things, the key elements that we look at when we are working with and supporting and celebrating a kiddo with autism. So I want to talk a little bit about autism as a culture. Again, I mentioned at the beginning of our session tonight that some people in the autism community are actually rejecting the puzzle picture. So when you go and you do a search on Google Images, or if you look at different organizations that are supporting autism, you might see a puzzle piece, or you might see that that awareness ribbon and its puzzles and things like that. Now, first and foremost, if you have some of those things, that does not make you a bad person, okay? I have a beautiful scarf. It's a puzzle scarf that one of my autism teachers years ago in Northside made for me when I was a district coordinator. And it is one of my absolute favorite, most cherished things that I wear. And so many of the families that I work with, embrace the puzzle and things like that. But I just want to indicate to everyone that there's also this school of thought that autism as a culture, that they're not a puzzle to fix. They really want to encourage people first language. And this is straight from autismhelp.org, Autism, Adults and Autism Culture. The autistic culture is a culture based around autistic patterns of thought and interest. Fundamental to the culture is the view that autistic traits are a valuable variation in neurology. When I talked about that autistic brain and how beautiful that autistic brain is, this falls into that. A valuable variation in neurology, not a disorder. This view and participation in autistic culture is not universal among autistic people. So this is not something that this is one school of thought. It's not right or wrong. It's simply a school of thought. And if you're like me, I tend to just honor and celebrate however that person with autism would like us to celebrate and honor and support them. Autistic culture holds a concept that autism as a valid and unique way of being should be embraced and appreciated, not shunned or cured. This is sometimes called neurodiversity, or the anti-cure perspective. Again, this is controversial, though. I wanted to put it out there because it's growing in popularity in our culture and in the media. But I also know that I work with so many families and so many teachers that would also, on the flip side of this, say, you know what, though? I've been praying for a cure. I've been trying to find a cure. I will do anything to help my child. I will do anything to help them speak and learn and not get so upset and not get so overwhelmed and scared in their world. So again, lots of different schools of thought. There's no right or wrong answer. The bottom line is autism truly is a culture, and we that are not of the autistic world, the best things we can do are accept, be aware, continue to educate ourselves and everyone around us, love, honor, and appreciate. That's our job. So to summarize some general supports, remember things like visuals, planning home and school activities that support executive functioning. So for more information, please do some searches for supporting executive functioning deficits. There's some great information about that, not just for kiddos on the spectrum, but lots of other kiddos that might have related disorders. Having that individual voice at all times, that communication system present, available, and in every context. Looking at sensory supports, honoring when our students need a break, making sure they have a way to ask for help, for ask support, and to get their needs met. I want to close our session tonight with a quick video called Appreciating Autism. Give me just a minute while I share my screen.
Gotta love technology. Hold on, I'll bring on. Oh, there we go. There we go. All right. Now we're ready. I think you might have to check that box again that says share audio. I'm not getting the audio out of it.
Okay, sorry. One more time. Third time's a charm.
Yes. Hello again. Just bear with us, everybody, and we'll get this video up and running in just a minute. But as you can tell, Anissa, she's an expert on this. All right, here we go. Go ahead and hit play.
When it comes to autism, finding the right words can be tough. Finding understanding doesn't have to be.
Say hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom. Hi, Julian, I love you.
Love you too.
I close my eyes and I can see the world that's waiting for me.
You're so happy.
Together, we can create a kinder, more inclusive world for the millions of people on the autism spectrum.
Who? You. Silly. What if it's too hard?
I'm gonna push through.
What if it's too tough?
I'm gonna push through.
I am strong.
You have been accepted to Kutztown University.
But it feels like home.
Go to autismspeaks.org.
Okay. So I hope that y'all enjoyed that. And again, one of the things I love about this video is that it promotes that inclusivity. That's what this is about, a more caring, inclusive, we're all in this together world, especially for our students with autism that teach me and hopefully teach you each and every day. So with that, I would love to take some questions.
All right. Let me bring Alethea back on as well. And Anissa, thank you so much for that. And, you know, that was you're definitely the guru. Alethea, you're in second place right now.
If I know anything, it's just the kids that have taught me what to do, and the parents and the teachers.
But a very important second place, Alethea. Very. You know.
Thank you.
All right, so yeah, we'll definitely open it up for questions. We did have one from earlier. What are some tips to help a parent figure out the trigger that causes anxiety and crying?
What are some tips to help the parent? Oh, that's a great question. Okay. One of the best things that you can do, because we all do this, especially as a mom, we see our kid crying, and then our attention diverts from whatever we're doing, and we go straight to the crying or the tantrum or whatever. And with not just with autistic behavior, but really with any behavior, what we have to do is try to catch what happened right before. So we try to self-soothe our kiddo, but then think before that next occurrence, what was that child doing right before? Was it something in the environment that wasn't right? Like the good old, I dropped my cookie and it broke, so all of a sudden I've got to fall apart because it's not the same cookie anymore, which happens. Or was it something that, what provoked the behavior? What was the trigger? Because it might be different each time. And then we have to think, was it external, like a sound or the broken cookie, or maybe the video stopped and that was the only way the child could communicate? Or maybe is it something internal? Was there a pain? Did they fall? What was it? So to try to find out that crying or anxiety, really look at what's happening in that immediate environment with that kiddo and think, do they have a way to communicate pain? Do they have a way to communicate or come and get me if something's wrong? If the video ends, how do they let me know instead of crying and screaming? If the cookie breaks, what do they do? If what is happening, if a change occurs, is that trigger? Because then for the next time, we can kind of get behind it before that behavior occurs and set up some supports. Like, again, the visual of like, come get mommy. Maybe it's a picture of you as mom, and you have that in the living room. Maybe you're in the kitchen trying to get dinner ready, and you put a video on for your child so you can actually get dinner ready. Been there, done that. And maybe you have a picture though of mom. So, and you teach the child to get the picture and bring it to you, or to have a picture that says it stopped and they need to bring it to you. So you're teaching that replacement behavior. But it's hard to answer that without knowing what is happening with your child. But what I really encourage is to try to look at what was happening right before, be kind of an investigator and see what happened before when my kiddo was getting upset, what triggered that crying, and what can I do to teach them what to do instead of the crying. Most anxiety comes from when a kid does not understand something, when they're fearful because they don't get it. Something has changed, something is not right in their world, and they're using a behavior to say, hey, come and fix this, come and help this, because it's not working for me.
All right. Thank you, Heidi, for the question. I'm going to bring Alethea on. I know Alethea has a question for you.
Okay, so I know that in the classroom, we try to teach and build capacity in a student being able to learn self-determination. As a campus person, teacher in the classroom, I find that I get this question. And so I just wanted to get your opinion. I do know that it's a personal choice on behalf of the parent, but knowing that self-determination is so important for the student, even early on, but as they grow older, I wonder when is a good time to talk with my child, right, about his or her disability. I've gotten that question many times, and I just would be curious, knowing, the various families that you've had the opportunity of working with. What can that look like? What maybe some tips or advice could you give?
Oh, I love that question. And I think that is critical, especially because we are seeing this first of all, more acceptance of our students, but also hopefully, again, I'm kind of a cup half full kind of gal, but I feel like we're accepting disabilities more and more anyway. So talking to your child about their disability is definitely a personal choice that you would make as a family. But I really encourage you, as your student starts to ask, usually there's signs. And the more families that I've worked with that have asked me that, and we kind of end up having a dialogue about, well, what is this happening? Is this happening? Are they asking this? Are they asking that? We kind of come up together with kind of a good time. sometimes there's signs like if a student's asking, why is this happening? Or why do I think this way? Or sometimes I get like this and I feel like other kids aren't getting this way. If you see that a student is starting, or your child is starting to ask some of those questions, this might be a good time to talk about what autism is and present it simply as that. It's a different way of learning. And some of our students, as they've gotten older and they've been more aware of their differences and their challenges, when they start to hear, oh, wait, I have this autism brain and this is what happened, this sense of relief comes over them, like, oh, this is what I've been challenged with, but look at all these things that can help me. From a personal perspective, and I know this is not autism, but our own daughter, our daughter, who's a teenage daughter, she has dyslexia, and we chose to tell her when she was about in second grade. It was pretty early, but we had to present it not as a disability, but as a different way that her brain thought about things and a different way that she took in information. But the whole time, you can't present it as this victim mentality, because this is not victim mentality. This is part of the uniqueness of the disability. So presenting the facts, getting good information on facts that are easy to understand for your child, but then also not just presenting the facts, but then getting to the supports. When you feel like this, these are some things that you can ask for and advocate for. Not, oh, I have autism, or, oh, I have dyslexia, so I can't do this. We want to completely get our kids away from the I can't attitude and get them into the I got this attitude. I love self-determination. I love self-advocacy, because we want our kids to not need us all the time. We want our kids to be as independent as possible, and to teach them how to self-advocate for needs. When they understand better what their needs are, it's going to make them more successful in life, in looking at down the road, getting a job, becoming employed, having a relationship, a social relationship, a romantic relationship, maybe going to college, maybe going, further after the bus stops, whatever that might look like for your child. Being armed with information is armor and awareness, so that they can continue to advocate as they go on. So I think that's an amazing question, and I really encourage it. There's no magical age, but typically a parent will start to hear their student asking questions, or recognizing that they're seeing or thinking things differently, and just continue to talk about how they can embrace this gift of uniqueness, that it's not something bad. It's something that's unique to them, just like some of us that need, that wear glasses, or that read differently, or that listen differently. It's all part of who they are. And going forward in self-advocacy. Self-advocacy is huge. I'm so glad you brought up that question. I know that was a long answer, but I was excited about that question. Great one, Alethea.
Thank you.
All right, we do have another one here from Liz. She asked, any tips for our families in preparing for summer break and a big change in routine? The tips could also help for students returning to campus after attending school remotely.
Yes, absolutely. So using things like those visual supports and things like social stories, and you can go on the net and look up Carol Gray's social stories. She was kind of the founding father of social stories. That's a great technique to help read and prepare students for changes like returning back to in-person learning. And I think actually Carol Gray has some things on there on her website, but it's Carol Gray Social Stories. Also using those visual supports, not just, hey, you're going to go back to school on Monday and you're going to need to wear a mask, so good luck. We've got to really prepare as much as we can as far as what's going to happen, but not just what's going to happen, but if plan A doesn't work, here's plan B. So if you start going back to school and this is your teacher, and here's a picture of your teacher, and then all of a sudden she's there 2 days and now she's gone because she had to quarantine maybe because of COVID. Teaching, I might have a sub there, I might have someone else there, but I will continue to do my lesson, or I will continue to do my schedule. So using things like schedules, even in the summertime. So Liz had the question about even the summer break. A lot of people go, woohoo, it's summer. And a lot of our families with autism are going, whoa, it's summer. What do I do? First of all, there might be some great summer resources and opportunities that are around. I know we're a little bit more limited because of COVID, but you can check with agencies such as the ARC of San Antonio and Any Baby Can of San Antonio. They have lots of good summer resources for parents and of educators. There's also some great opportunities right now with UTSA with some summer programming with ABA. There's different grant opportunities that are out there. So looking at things like that, not just to continue to keep your child engaged, but when they are having those changes in routine, it's important to try to keep a routine and structure as much as possible in the summer. It doesn't mean they have to wake up every day at 7 a.m. and eat breakfast at 7:10 a.m., but at least having some consistent routine and having those visual supports to follow can really make the summer go a little bit more smoothly. So check out some of those resources, the ARC of San Antonio and Any Baby Can of San Antonio. They've got some great summer supports for families.
All right. All right. So I'll bring back Alethea. I believe we're out of questions in the chat, but again, another, very successful, presentation, and I dated myself earlier. I said I was Johnny Carson, Alethea is Ed McMahon. And then I guess Anissa is who sang Tiptoe Through the Tulips? Who was that guy? Do you remember that? Who was it? Yeah. Anissa Moore, that's you.
Okay, good. Okay, I was gonna say that Alethea was like Jimmy Fallon, and Brandon, you can be Justin Timberlake if you want.
Oh, man.
Little BFFs, and I'll come on and be, I don't know, Cindy Crawford.
Oh, man.
No, I'm kidding.
I see how you chose that. And Brandon, in your defense, we knew who those people were, so.
I knew.
It did all of us.
Yeah.
I absolutely knew.
Yeah, I'm stuck in the 80s, 70s.
Me too. That was the best. That was the best. But everything old is new again. When you look at Netflix or all those things, all the movies coming out, everything are throwbacks from 80s and 90s. I mean, it's the best. It's the best.
So we just have people thanking you for sharing this, that this was a great formative session. And, Anissa, thank you so much for your time for this evening. And
my pleasure.
And for talking to us here at East Central. Alethea, do you have any final things you want to say?
I just love that you are a friend of ours and willing to come and present on big things and provide so much great information that's usable right out the door. So thank you for doing that, and I appreciate my time with you as well.
Oh, thank you, Alethea. It's my honor, and it's been my honor just to be in this field. I mean, what a gift! What a gift to be able to be in this field and to help. And I hope that we all continue to learn. I'm still learning every day, every single day, what we can do better, what we can do smarter, what we can do with more compassion. So,
Christine Scott, she's going to share this with her friends from other districts.
Great.
Please.
Awesome.
I do want to tell all the viewers that this video lives forever. The YouTube links and the Facebook links that you took to get here, you can always go back and watch it 24/7, 365. If you miss something, you can go back and watch it. All right, so everybody, thank you so much for watching, and we'll call this good night.
All right.
Thanks, guys.